Mom sets up camera, catches Repairman in the act. Martina's mouth drops wide open as she watches the secret footage she recorded of the repairman in her attic. But this guy was clearly no repairman. What he was doing left Martina feeling sick to her stomach. It was like she was watching a scene from a horror movie, but this was no Hollywood slasher, this was real life for life. Then suddenly, the repairman gets up and walks down the attic stairs, heading into Martina's home. She had no idea what he was about to get up to or where he was headed, but when Martina found out, she was lost for words. There was no coming back from this. Martina McDonald, along with her 3 kids, recently moved to a small town just south of Pennsylvania. She had just left her estranged husband and was looking for a fresh start. So when Martina arrived in her new town with a population of 2,003, she was excited for a new chapter in her and her children's lives. But this devoted mom had no idea what was coming to her. Townspeople instantly welcomed Martina and her family into their town. It felt like everybody was a community as opposed to just mere neighbors. So when Martina asked a local handyman to come fix a problem with her house, she thought it was going to be plain sailing. Little did she know that she was about to uncover something truly sinister about a so-called friendly neighbor. As Martina's new home wasn't brand new, there were some issues that needed work. She asked around town for a local repairman that was reliable, honest, and kind. Many people pointed their fingers to Matthew Smith, a local repairman. He was the perfect gentleman and an even better repairman. Or so everybody thought. Martina swiftly asked Matthew to come over and assess the problem. And the following day, armed with a friendly smile and his toolbox, Matthew arrived at Martina's home. As soon as she saw him, Martina could tell she made the right choice. She introduced him to her 3 kids, and they replied with a smile before retreating back to their rooms. Matthew looked like he was up for the job. But Martina had no idea what he was about to get up to. Matthew had been in the attic for half an hour, looking around to see what the problem was. Then suddenly, Martina received a message. She had to go pick up a parcel from a friend, around 20 minutes away. She took her 2 other children with her, but left her 10-year-old son Jaden at home. He would be okay after all. Matthew was in the house. But Martina was soon about to regret leaving her son with a complete stranger. After picking up the parcel, Martina and her 2 kids headed back home. When they arrived, everything seemed okay. Matthew was still upstairs working, while Jaden was in his room. But when Martina walked into her own bedroom to start her laundry, a terrible feeling hit the pit of her stomach. For some strange reason, Martina felt an uneasy feeling shiver up her spine. Her drawers were half open, and it looked like her dressing table had been tampered with. She brushed it off as just her kids having a look in her room. They were always getting up to mischief in there. But Martina was so wrong. The following day, Matthew arrived for another day at work. He said the total cost would come to $7,000. Ouch. But money was the last thing on Martina's mind. You see, her son Jaden was acting strange. Had something happened to him? In the space of 24 hours, Jaden had completely changed. He used to be bubbly and outgoing, but now he was quiet and reserved. And to make things even more strange, every time Jaden saw Matthew the repair, he ran to his room, as if Matthew was the boogeyman. What was Jaden hiding? When Martina finally realized what was wrong, she was left feeling sick to her stomach. Martina knew she had put the truth. Using an old nanny cam, she positioned it in the attic to see what Matthew was up to. It was a foolproof plan. Martina would get to see what Matthew was up to. But when she looked at the secretly recorded footage later that night, she couldn't believe her eyes. Martina set up the nanny cam where Matthew was working in the attic. She didn't want to have to resort to this, but something weird was going on. Martina could feel it. She pressed record and headed back downstairs. And so, Matthew arrived at Martina's home and soon got to work. Martina watched him walk up into the attic, knowing in a couple of hours she'd get the truth. But she wasn't prepared for it. Martina knew she had to leave the house in order to get the most genuine and real footage possible. She decided to head to the supermarket with her 2 kids, while leaving Jaden again with Matthew. After leaving Matthew alone in the house with her Jaden, Martina felt uneasy the entire car journey to the supermarket. Little did Martina know she had just made a big mistake. 40 minutes later and Martina arrived back from the supermarket. As soon as she set foot into her house, she heard silence, followed by the sound of childlike giggles. It was coming from her son Jaden, but he wasn't in his room. Then Martina realized Jaden was in the attic, where Matthew was working. As quick as a flash she ran into the attic and saw Jaden was sat in front of Matthew, who was messing inside the walls. Both Jaden and Matthew turned around to see a startled Martina and smiled. Martina sighed in relief. She told her son to come down for dinner and she left Matthew upstairs, still being secretly recorded. When Martina watched the footage later that day and saw what Matthew had been up to in the attic, she was lost for words. Matthew finished working in the attic and came downstairs to tell Martina he'd be returning on Monday to finish it up. After rounding up his tools, he smiled at Jaden before leaving through the door. As soon as he shut the door, Martina raced upstairs to retrieve the nanny cam and watch the footage. She wasn't prepared for what she would find. Martina uploaded the footage onto her computer and clicked play. At first, she could see Matthew walking around the attic, inspecting the walls. Then, what the repairman did next left Martina lost for words. Matthew the repairman just merely opened a vent and then sat down. He got out his phone and started laughing at YouTube videos. Is this what he had been doing the entire time he was here? Martina thought he should be working. Had she just been ripped off? She thought things couldn't get any worse, but then all of a sudden Matthew got up and headed downstairs. Where was he going? Martina didn't install cameras all around the house, so she had no idea where Matthew was or what he was up to. He shouldn't be in other parts of the house though, the attic was where he was working. Hundreds of questions raced around her mind as she sat, soaked in confusion and fear, wondering what exactly the repairman was up to. But then Martina realized something, her son Jaden's room was right at the bottom of the stairs. For about 15 minutes the footage showed an empty attic while Matthew was somewhere else in the house. Then, Martina saw Matthew walk back up the stairs. And what he was holding left her lost for words. You see, Matthew was holding some of Martina's clothes. These included her underwear and other items. Martina felt sick to her stomach. This would explain why she thought things were going missing. She was speechless. Not only was this so-called repairman ripping her off, $7,000 to be exact, but he was also creepy and completely gross. So what was Martina going to do about it? Feeling both angry and sick to her stomach, Martina knew she had to let others in the town know about Matthew and his sickening habits. She swiftly told her neighbor about the incident and showed her the footage. As expected, within a few days Matthew was the talk of the town. Many people were shouting at him in the streets, telling him he was gross and needed to leave the town. But would he? A few months after the incident, Matthew finally granted the townspeople their wishes and he left the town. The entire town was relieved. After all, who would want somebody like him living next door? For Martina, she finally managed to get an actual professional repairman to come in and fix her house, a handyman who wouldn't rifle through her drawers or scam her of $7,000.